You won't believe what I found in my inbox that night. I'm Martin Hollis, by the way. 43 years old, been designing power grid systems for 15 years. What I'm about to tell you is how I got back what some corporate snake tried to steal from me. So there I was, sitting in my apartment around 9 p.m., just checking emails before bed. Nothing unusual. Then I see this message from some executive assistant I barely knew. Subject line, review copy, do not distribute. I almost deleted it. Figured it was sent to the wrong person. But something made me click it open. The attachment was a PDF. The Innovation Leader, Draft V3 by Landon Brooks. That's my CEO, or was my CEO until about 3 weeks ago. I'm thinking, okay, another corporate book. Guy probably hired a ghostwriter to make himself sound smart. But then I start reading. The preface says, from sketching systems by hand to launching the most sophisticated grid optimization models in the industry, this is the story of how I engineered the future. Already I'm rolling my eyes, but I keep scrolling. Chapter 2, the night I rebuilt the core system. Chapter 5, 18 months in the lab, my journey through the model that changed everything. Now I'm paying attention, because I know those stories. I live those stories. At 2:30 in the morning, eating stale vending machine food while everyone else was home sleeping. I read the whole thing, every single page, and it hit me like a truck. This guy had taken my entire career and rewritten it with himself as the hero. The specific technical details I'd figured out after months of testing. The breakthrough moments when I finally cracked problems that had been driving me crazy for weeks. Even the exact phrases I used in my project notes. There was this one graphic that really got to me. It was copied straight from a whiteboard photo I'd sent him 3 years ago during our first optimization project. My handwriting was still on it. He didn't just steal credit. He stole my whole professional identity. I closed the laptop and sat there in the dark for a while. My hands weren't shaking or anything. I just felt, I don't know, cold, maybe. See, here's the thing you need to understand. For 15 years, I'd been the guy behind the scenes making everything work. Landon was the face, the talker, the one who got up in front of investors and made it all sound brilliant. And I was okay with that. I'm not a presentation guy. Never wanted to be. I just wanted to build good systems and maybe get some recognition from people who actually understood the work. But this was different. This wasn't just taking credit for a project. This was rewriting history. Let me back up and tell you how I got into this mess in the first place. 7 years ago, I got an offer from the Department of Energy. Full fellowship, advanced grid research division. Dream job, basically. The kind of position I'd been working toward since graduate school. I was all set to take it. Had the acceptance letter printed out, taped to my fridge, ready to mail back. Then I made the mistake of mentioning it to Landon during our weekly team meeting. He asked me to stay after everyone else left. Martin, he said, DOE is great and all, but you're already changing the world here. You're not just a researcher. You're a leader. He had this way of talking that made you believe whatever he was selling. Very smooth, very convincing. Look, he said, if you stay, I'll make you chief engineer within 18 months. Your name goes on patents, project credits, everything. No government bureaucracy. No committee approvals. Just real impact. I wanted that so bad I could taste it. To finally be visible. To get recognition for the work instead of just watching someone else present it. So I turned down the DOE job. Biggest mistake of my career, but I didn't know that then. For a while, it seemed like the right call. I designed Voltrion's predictive energy routing systems from scratch. Built a dynamic optimization model that became the foundation for everything we did. I remember this one night when the whole system crashed during peak demand. Everyone had gone home, but I stayed. Figured out the problem around 2:30 a.m., fixed it, and got everything running again before the morning update cycle. I didn't expect a parade or anything, but I thought maybe someone would notice. Maybe Landon would mention my name in the next company meeting. Something. That never happened. The real wake-up call came 2 months before I quit. Voltrion was hosting this virtual conference with press and investors. I wasn't presenting, just making sure the technical demos didn't crash. The moderator introduced Landon for the final presentation, the evolution of predictive energy systems. I figured it would be the usual marketing talk. Buzzwords, big promises, light on actual details. But then he said something that made my stomach drop. I personally developed the breakthrough routing algorithm over 3 years of intensive research. It became the turning point for our entire optimization strategy. He said it with complete confidence, no hesitation, like it was absolute fact. That algorithm took me 18 months to build. I tested every piece of it dozens of times, stayed up nights debugging problems that made my head hurt, built it line by line, simulation by simulation. One of the newer engineers sitting next to me turned and whispered, Didn't you design that system? I just nodded. Didn't trust myself to say anything. That night, I went back to my desk and opened up a folder I kept on my personal drive. Archive MH Private. I'd been saving everything for years. Email threads, voice memos, code versions, technical diagrams. All of it with timestamps. I clicked on a recording from that 2:30 a.m. fix. My own voice, tired but focused. Fix the energy handoff problem by rebuilding the convergence logic. Running tests now. I sat there listening to myself solve problems that Landon was now claiming credit for. It wasn't just the stolen recognition. It was how completely he'd erased me from the story. Like I'd never existed. I started thinking about that DOE offer I'd turned down. Still had the email buried in my files somewhere. Found it in a folder I'd labeled "What If." The message I'd sent back then said, "I believe the work I'm doing at Voltreon is just as important." I read that line about 5 times. Then I closed my laptop. Look, I'm not the type to make big dramatic gestures. Never have been. But sitting there in my apartment that night looking at 15 years of my career packaged up with someone else's name on it, I knew I was done being invisible. The next morning I started planning my exit, but not the kind where you just walk away quietly and let them keep everything. I was going to take back what was mine. So I spent the next few days quietly getting my ducks in a row. I'm talking documentation, evidence, the whole 9 yards. 15 years of keeping detailed records was about to pay off. I had folders full of stuff. Email threads where I'd explain technical concepts to Landon. Voice recordings from late-night debugging sessions. Code versions with my personal tags still in them. Even sketches I'd drawn on whiteboards and photographed for my own reference. All of it with dates and times. I'm kind of obsessive about that stuff, always have been. Good thing, too. The resignation letter was just the opening move. The real play was what came next. I remembered this business card I'd kept for 3 years. Dr. Rachel Torres, CTO at Heliodyne Innovations. She'd approached me at a conference back in 2020. Very direct, very professional. "When you're ready to work somewhere that actually values what you do," she'd said, "give me a call." I'd kept that card in my notebook all this time. Never thought I'd actually use it. That night I sent her a simple email. "Still interested? You said to call when I was ready." "I'm ready." She got back to me at 7 the next morning. "Let's talk." 11 a.m. our offices. By 10:45 I'm standing outside Heliodyne's building. Completely different vibe from Voltreon. No marble lobby, no fancy art. Just clean, functional space where people actually got work done. Rachel was waiting in a small conference room. No assistant, no PowerPoint deck. Just her laptop and a cup of coffee. "You don't waste time," she said. "I've wasted enough already." She didn't ask for my whole life story. Just got straight to it. "I remember your presentation on grid optimization 3 years ago. You didn't just solve the technical problem. You changed how the whole industry thinks about load balancing." I pulled out a USB drive and slid it across the table. Voice logs, design documents, email records, everything going back 5 years. All of it shows my work. She plugged it in and started scrolling through files. Took her maybe 10 minutes to see what she needed. "You've got enough here to challenge every patent they filed," she said. "Question is, what do you want to do about it?" Before I could answer, she opened another file on her screen. Voltreon company logo at the top. "Someone sent this to me yesterday," she said. "Internal launch plan for something called Project Vesta. Take a look at slide 4. I looked, and there it was. A system design I'd sketched out 2 years ago in my personal notebook. Never submitted it anywhere. Never showed it to anyone. Just something I was playing around with in my spare time. They were planning to launch it in 6 months. How did they get this? I asked. Good question. But here's the better question. What are you going to do about it? I stared at that slide for a long time. They're not just stealing my past work. They're trying to steal my future. Then maybe it's time you take it back, she said. Come work for us. Full authority on your projects. And when you're ready, our legal team will help you fight for what's yours. I didn't need to think about it. Yes, and just like that I had allies. The cease and desist letter showed up the next day. Big law firm letterhead, lots of fancy language about proprietary information and trade secrets. Basically threatening to sue me if I leveraged or displayed any derivative works developed within Voltreon systems. Here's the funny thing about corporate lawyers. They're really good at sounding intimidating, but they don't always do their homework. 6 years ago, during a compliance audit, I'd written a policy about intellectual property rights, Section 7.3 of the Employee Handbook. It said that any work done by employees on their own time without company resources remained their property unless there was a specific agreement saying otherwise. Landon had signed off on it without reading it. I still had the signature page. So I wrote back, please refer to Section 7. 3 of your own policy handbook. The work in question was developed during non-billable hours using personal resources, as per policy signed by Mr. Brooks on March 4, 2017. It remains my intellectual property. I attached a copy of the signed policy. That shut them up for about a week. But the real fun started when their systems began falling apart. I got a text message from someone I hadn't heard from in months. Jonas, one of the back-end engineers still working at Voltron. Martin, weird question, but were you the one who built the heartbeat module? I knew exactly what he was talking about. 3 years ago, I'd built a core optimization routine and tagged it MH Opt V39 in the code. Just a personal reference so I could find it later. Because it's missing, he said. And everything's breaking. Missing. That's not something that just happens to critical system components. Modules might glitch or get corrupted, but they don't just disappear. Send me a screenshot of the error log, I told him. What I saw made me smile for the first time in weeks. Fatal error, missing core logic module MH Opt V39. They'd scrubbed my name from the documentation, the credits, the patent filings, but they never touched the actual code because they didn't understand what it did. It was buried deep in the system architecture, handling the real-time prediction algorithms that kept everything running smoothly. And now it was gone. Probably got deleted during some routine cleanup by someone who didn't know what they were looking at. By noon, I had confirmation from 3 different sources. Voltron's grid management system was running in emergency fallback mode across 5 regions. No predictive capability, no load optimization, just basic power routing. My phone rang, internal number from Voltron. I let it ring, then came the text. Can we talk? Systems are down. No one knows how to fix this. I turned my phone off. Later that day, I'm sitting in Rachel's office and she shows me her computer screen. Industry monitoring tools were tracking power grid performance across the country. Voltron's managed regions were showing efficiency drops, demand prediction failures, the works. They're hemorrhaging credibility, she said. Word gets around fast in this industry. Good, I said. Let them figure it out themselves. What if they can't? I shrugged. Then maybe they shouldn't have built their whole business model on work they didn't understand. Here's what most people don't get about complex technical systems. It's not enough to know what buttons to push. You have to understand why the buttons exist in the first place. You have to know what happens when things go wrong and how to fix them. Landon could give a great presentation about grid optimization. He could throw around all the right technical terms. But when the system actually broke, he was useless. And now everyone was starting to see that. The news started picking it up by the end of the week. Not front page stuff, but industry publications were reporting on unusual grid management anomalies in Voltron-operated regions. I didn't call any reporters. Didn't need to. The systems spoke for themselves. Rachel was right. Word travels fast in our industry. Engineers talk to each other. When something doesn't work the way it's supposed to, people notice. And when people notice, they start asking questions. Questions like, didn't Martin Hollis used to work there? Whatever happened to him? I was about to find out. The conference invitation came out of nowhere. I'm sitting at my new desk at Heliodyne, working on some optimization models, when this email pops up. Global Smart Systems Conference in Boston. They want me as a guest observer in recognition of foundational contributions to predictive infrastructure. No presentation slot, just a reserved seat. 4th row, center left. I almost deleted it. Then I realized what this was about. Word was getting around. People in the industry were starting to connect the dots between Voltron's failing systems and the guy who used to work there. Landon was scheduled to give the opening keynote. Same conference where, 3 years earlier, I'd presented our grid optimization work to a small technical session while he's schmoozing investors in the main hall. Now he'd be on the big stage, talking about next-generation predictive infrastructure. My work, in other words. I decided to go. The conference center was packed. Engineers, researchers, government people, corporate executives, the kind of crowd that actually knew what they were talking about when it came to power systems. I found my seat just as they introduced Landon. He walked out looking confident as ever. Navy suit, perfect hair, that practiced smile. The presentation title appeared on the screen behind him. Building Tomorrow's Smart Grid. Leadership and Innovation. He started talking. Same smooth delivery as always. Energy resilience, demand management, predictive algorithms. All the buzzwords in the right order. But something was different. I could hear it even if the audience couldn't yet. For 15 years, I'd written those talking points for him. Crafted the explanations that made complex technical concepts sound accessible. Built the demos that backed up his promises. Now, stripped of all that support, he was just reciting generic phrases. No depth, no substance. like someone reading from a script they didn't really understand. A few people in the front rows started shifting in their seats. I saw one guy check his phone. Another whispered something to his colleague. Then came the Q&A session. First question was soft. Something about implementation timelines. Landon handled it fine with more buzzwords about agile development and scalable solutions. Second question was trickier. A researcher from Germany asked about dynamic load balancing in microgrid environments. Technical stuff. Landon's answer was word salad. We leverage optimized distribution strategies to enhance real-time adaptability across multi-nodal systems. Sounds impressive if you don't know what he's talking about. But this was a room full of engineers. They knew nonsense when they heard it. Third question came from a young woman in the front. She had a University of Chicago badge. Mr. Brooks, I've been reading about the recent system performance issues in Voltron-managed regions. Can you comment on the missing optimization modules that seem to be causing the problems? The room went dead quiet. Landon blinked a few times. Those reports are exaggerated. We're conducting routine maintenance upgrades across several regions, but the error logs specifically mention missing core algorithms developed by Martin Hollis. Wasn't he your chief engineer until recently? Now everyone was paying attention. I could see heads turning, people leaning forward. Martin was part of our team, yes, but the core architecture was developed collaboratively under my technical leadership. Someone in the second row spoke up. I thought Hollis presented that optimization framework at the MIT Technical Summit 2 years ago. I was there. Another voice. Yeah, his name's still in the version control logs. MH Hollis Opt, right? Landon was starting to sweat. You could see it under those stage lights. The naming conventions in our code don't necessarily reflect individual contributions, he said. Software development is a team effort. A guy with a DOE badge stood up. Mr. Brooks, I'm familiar with Mr. Hollis's work from his fellowship applications. The predictive algorithms currently failing in your systems match the technical specifications he submitted to us 7 years ago. Specifications that predate your patent filings by 18 months. The room erupted in murmurs. People pulling out phones, typing notes, having quick conversations with their neighbors. Landon tried to regain control. I think there's some confusion about timelines and attribution here. Perhaps we could move on to questions about future innovations. But it was too late. The spell was broken. The next 3 questions were all about me. My background, my contributions, why I'd left Voltron, whether the system failures were related to my departure. Landon couldn't answer any of them with specifics because he didn't know the technical details. He'd never actually understood the work he'd been taking credit for. I sat there watching 15 years of stolen recognition finally come back to where it belonged. Not because I demanded it, but because the truth has a way of surfacing when people who actually know what they're talking about start asking questions. When the session ended, the applause was polite but scattered. People were already getting up to leave before Landon finished his closing remarks. I slipped out a side exit and walked to the coffee stand in the lobby. Within 5 minutes, 3 different people had approached me. You're Martin Hollis, right? The grid optimization guy? I heard you're at Heliodyne now. Are you taking on new projects? My university is looking for consulting work on predictive load balancing. Are you available? Word travels fast in technical circles. By the end of the day, my LinkedIn had 20 new connection requests from people at the conference. But the real validation came that evening. I was having dinner at the hotel restaurant when someone tapped me on the shoulder. It was Dr. Patricia Hayes from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. I'd admired her work for years, but never had a reason to meet her. Martin Hollis, she said, I've been following your career for a while. What you built at Voltron was impressive work. I'm sorry it took so long for people to realize who was really behind it. She sat down at my table without asking. I've got a question for you. We're putting together a consortium on next-generation grid resilience. Federal funding, multi-year project, real impact on national infrastructure. Interested in leading the technical development? I almost choked on my coffee. This was the kind of opportunity I'd dreamed about since graduate school. The job comes with one requirement, she said. Your name goes first on everything. Papers, patents, presentations, the works. We want the actual innovators getting the recognition they deserve. I thought about that for a long time. Then I pulled out my phone and called my son Kyle. Dad, he said, how was the conference? Good, I said. Really good. I think things are finally starting to turn around. What do you mean? I'll tell you when I get home. But Kyle, I want you to know that sometimes it takes a while, but the truth has a way of coming out. And when it does, it's worth the wait. After I hung up, I turned to Dr. Hayes, when do we start? The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 unread text messages. The industry news sites had picked up what happened at the conference. Headlines like Voltreon CEO struggles to explain technical failures and missing engineer key to smart grid breakthrough. One article quoted several conference attendees saying they'd always assumed I was the real technical lead behind Voltreon's innovations. My phone rang. "Rachel, have you seen the news?" she asked. Hard to miss. "We need to talk. This changes everything." The grid engineer's story, part 4. Part 2. That conversation with Rachel changed everything. "We've got 3 major energy companies asking about you specifically," she said. 2 universities want you for research positions. And the Department of Energy just called asking if you'd consider heading up their new grid modernization initiative. I sat there trying to process it all. 6 months ago, I was invisible. Now people were lining up to work with me. "There's something else," Rachel said. "We got a call from Voltreon's board of directors. Unofficial, of course. They want to discuss resolving outstanding intellectual property matters." What's that mean? It means they're scared. Their stock dropped 12% since the conference. 2 major clients have already switched to competitors. They need this story to go away. I leaned back in my chair. "What do you think?" "I think you hold all the cards now. Question is, what do you want?" I knew the answer immediately. "I want my name on the work I actually did, and I want to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else." The settlement took 3 weeks to negotiate. Not because it was complicated, but because Voltreon's lawyers kept trying to include non-disclosure clauses that would keep me from talking about what happened. I said no to every version of that. "Here's the deal," I told their legal team during one particularly frustrating conference call. "You can either acknowledge publicly that I was the lead engineer on the systems you've been crediting to Mr. Brooks, or we can let the patent office sort it out. Your choice." They chose the acknowledgement. The press release went out on a Thursday morning. Voltreon Systems recognizes foundational contributions of former chief engineer Martin Hollis to proprietary grid optimization technology. It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was public recognition that I'd built the systems Landon had been taking credit for. My phone didn't stop ringing for 3 days. The best call came from Kyle. "Dad, my engineering professor just forwarded me an article about you in IEEE Spectrum. It says you're one of the top 5 grid optimization experts in the country." "That's nice," I said. "Nice, Dad, this is huge. My friends are asking if I can get them internships at your company." I laughed. It felt good to laugh about work stuff for the first time in years. "I'm proud of you," he said. "Not just for the technical stuff, but for standing up for yourself." That took guts. After we hung up, I sat there thinking about what he'd said. It did take guts. More than I thought I had. But here's what I learned. Sometimes the hardest part isn't fighting for what's yours. It's believing you deserve to fight in the first place. I spent 15 years thinking that being good at my job was enough. That if I just kept my head down and did quality work, recognition would eventually come. That was naive. In the corporate world, visibility matters as much as ability. Maybe more. The difference is, now I don't have to choose between the two. Last month, I started my new position with the Department of Energy. Director of Advanced Grid Systems Research. My name is on the office door, on the business cards, on every paper we publish. The team I'm building includes some of the smartest engineers I've ever worked with. Young guys and women who remind me of myself 20 years ago, except they're not going to spend their careers being invisible. We're working on the next generation of smart grid technology. Renewable integration, cybersecurity, resilience against extreme weather events. The kind of projects that actually matter. And you know what the best part is? When I present our work at conferences, nobody questions whether I understand what I'm talking about, because I built it. Every algorithm, every optimization routine, every line of code. I got a letter from Landon a few weeks ago, handwritten, which surprised me. He's not the handwritten letter type. It said, "Martin, I know this is probably too little too late, but I wanted you to know that I understand what I did was wrong. For 15 years, I took credit for your work and called it leadership. I convinced myself that the face mattered more than the engineering. But without you, there was never any real innovation happening. I'm sorry." I read it twice, then put it in my desk drawer. Not because I forgave him, exactly, but because it felt like the end of something. The real vindication isn't the apology or the settlement or even the new job title. It's walking into a room full of engineers and having them know exactly who I am and what I've accomplished. It's my son telling his friends that his dad is the guy who designed the systems keeping the power grid stable. It's getting calls from universities asking me to lecture about my work, not someone else's version of my work. It's building something new that has my name on it from day one. I was talking to one of my new team members last week. Bright kid, fresh out of MIT, reminds me of myself at that age. "Dr. Hollis," she said, I've been reading your papers from the Voltreon days. The optimization algorithms you developed are still being taught in graduate courses. How does it feel to finally get recognition for that work? I thought about it for a minute. It feels like I can finally stop looking backward and start focusing on what comes next, I said. And that's the truth. For years, I was so focused on the recognition I wasn't getting that I lost sight of why I became an engineer in the first place. It wasn't for fame or credit or my name in the headlines. It was to solve problems that mattered, to build systems that work when people need them to work. I'm doing that again now. But this time, everyone knows who's doing the building. The grid optimization system we're developing will be deployed nationally over the next 5 years. It'll handle renewable energy integration better than anything currently available, make the power infrastructure more resilient against cyber attacks and natural disasters. And when it's finished, my name will be on the patents, my signature on the technical specifications, my voice presenting the results at conferences. Not because I demanded it or fought for it, but because I built it. That's how it should have been all along. Sometimes people ask me if I regret staying at Voltreon as long as I did, if I wish I'd stood up to Landon sooner or taken that DOE job 7 years ago. The honest answer is no. Those 15 years taught me things I couldn't have learned anywhere else. About corporate politics, about the difference between leadership and management, about the importance of documenting your work. Most importantly, they taught me that talent without visibility is just a hobby. If you want your work to matter, you have to be willing to put your name on it. And you have to be prepared to defend it. The kid from MIT asked me what advice I'd give to young engineers just starting their careers. Keep records of everything you do, I told her. Not because you expect problems, but because good work deserves proper attribution. And don't assume that being good at your job is enough. If you build something important, make sure people know you built it. She nodded like she understood. I hope she does. Because the world needs good engineers. And good engineers deserve recognition for their work. All of it, not just the parts that make other people look good. That's my story. It took me 43 years to learn it, but I got there eventually. And now I'm just getting started.